At this moment, Mr. Lehr, you have the floor. Welcome and thank you so much.
I would like to give you some material that I used at the Global Engineering Conference in Las Vegas in April, because the purpose of that was also to try to look at the future and inspire people with regard to that. So let me begin by pointing out that 1908 was a very undistinguished year. Unless you came from Chicago, and there's this thing about the Cubs, most people can't recall anything that happened in 1908. It was not a very big year. And yet, in that year, there was a confluence of circumstances that came together in science and technology, in new developments, and in understanding, in an awareness of the environment. Each of those things happened independently and quietly, but they confluenced and came together in 1908. And for the first time in the history of this country, they gave the population in general a sense of what could be. And understanding what could be, the industrious Americans went after doing it. And so arguably, 1908 was the springboard year for the great technological revolution that we saw in the 20th century, that brought us from the horse and buggy days of 1908 to the great technologies that we enjoyed through the end of the 1900s and today. And in a very real way, 2008 has going for it a similar confluence of factors, which will in fact change the way we live and will drive technology at a rate which will make the expansion of the last century look amateurish. And those influences, there are quite a number of them that come together, but they're driven, I think, mostly by energy and the requirement for energy and the world political situation associated with it. Now, arguably, we are at a point where we are reaching the peak of oil production. And nobody will debate that. You might debate whether it happened last year or it'll happen in the next few years, but it's happening. And that means oil and gas production will continue to decrease. And that's our prime energy source. And the simple fact of the matter is that we have done precious little to move ourselves away from that. Now, it is right now 1:20, and I can tell you that in the next 40-minute period of time, enough solar energy will fall on this globe so that by 2 o'clock, 40 minutes from now, enough energy will have come onto this planet from the sun that if it were captured and converted, would meet 100% of all energy requirements from all sources for all countries of the world for 1 year. And it's free. You don't have to have a lot of imagination to understand that our energy future is not in gas and oil, but is in sources of energy like that. And if you think about it for just 3 or 4 minutes, what we're going to look at the end of this century is an all-electric world, where all propulsion, for ships, for trains, for cars, for everything we do, will be electric. And with that all-electric world comes a whole variety of changes in the way we live. Those of you who've been in the business for a long time realize that up until only a few years ago, Con Edison provided DC power to buildings. They've stopped doing that. If you begin to look at natural energy sources, most of the natural energy sources generate DC power. And that old debate between AC and DC is likely to be reopened. And it doesn't have to be solar energy. If you know the author Arthur C. Clarke, who wrote 2001, he died in March. And amazingly, one of the instructions he left was that if you write an obituary of me, include in it that I believe we will see cold fusion in the next 50 years. And so whether it's wind power or tidal power, or if it's some form of cold fusion or even nuclear energy, electricity is our future. And what does that mean in the way we will live and own buildings and operate buildings in the future? It is going to be a radical change. But at the same time, look at what providing that kind of an economy will mean in terms of the benefit to the country. Free of all energy imports and free of the world politics and situations that we're entangled in, because we need energy and we need to assure that we will continue to receive it. Increased work in that area and a whole new way of living. It is truly exciting to think about that and to think about the changes that are going to be happening. Right now, the amount of activity, for example, on just simply developing a better battery is phenomenal. And the batteries of the future will enable an automobile to drive for 4 or 6 hours at 70 miles an hour before it's recharged. And the recharge will probably be quicker than it takes to fill your 20-gallon tank. That's what's coming, and that will be an exciting future. So I don't know if that inspires everybody. It certainly inspires me. But I don't think that anybody who thinks we are going to progress at the rate of the last century and no faster is correct. The speed of change which we've experienced is nothing compared to what we're going to see in the future. And so I think, if anything, there are two things we have to do. First, we have to hang on for the ride. And secondly, there's an expression I like to use, it's leave your mind behind. Those of you who are Tom Clancy fans may recall that in his book, The Hunt for Red October, he created a character by the name of Josie, who was the radar operator. And Josie was continually thinking outside the box. Over his workstation was a little sign that said, leave your mind behind. That's not an invitation to stupidity, but it is rather a realization that sometimes all of the preconceived notions you have got to be left aside, so your mind is not impaired and it is open enough to see what the future can bring and to see how you can relate to it. So I invite you all to leave your mind behind. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Lehr. We will see you in September. Thank you all. Make sure you sign in if you have not to get credit. Thank you.